have some really exciting information and some wonderful panelists this evening. So I'm going to do a quick bio for each of our panelists, and then I think we're going to jump right in because we have quite a lot to talk about tonight. So first we have Dr. Moataz Al-Rifai. Dr. Rifai is the Behavioral Health Medical Director at Fidelis Care, which is a New York State health plan serving more than 2.4 million members across the state. He's also a board certified child, adolescent and adult psychiatrist, and a member of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Medical Association, and New York University Bellevue Psychiatric Society. His impressive list of research, honors, languages spoken, and professional experience is much too long to mention, but we are highly honored to have him join us here this evening. So thank you so much for being with us. We also have Brandon Beecham as the director of Mahanis' School Mental Health Resource and Training Center, and Mahanis is the Mental Health Association for New York State. But Brandon oversees a statewide project aimed at supporting K-12 schools and mental health education development and integration, professional development for school and mental health professionals, and establishing community partnerships for integrated supports for students and families. Brandon has extensive experience in nonprofit leadership and is a licensed mental health counselor in private practice. Brandon received his master's in education and MA in psychological counseling from Teachers College, Columbia University, and we are very honored to have Brandon join us as well. And then we have Dr. Robert Rotunda, who is the executive director of the New York State School Counselors Association. Dr. Rotunda and his team continue to grow the School Counselors Association and support school counselors across the state, and his advocacy has truly made a difference for students. He has served as chairman of the guidance department at Stimson Middle School in the South Huntington School District from 1995 until 2011. Prior to this assignment, he served as a middle school counselor in the Carle Place and Herricks school districts. Dr. Rotunda served as the president of the New York State School Counselor Association and is also an adjunct assistant professor at NYIT and Farmingdale State College. We thank Dr. Rotunda for always being the first to volunteer to help PTA. Now, before we get started in questions, I'm going to turn it over really quickly to our New York State PTA president, Dana Clayton, who wanted to give us a couple of welcoming words.
Thank you, Amy. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for tuning in tonight. Welcome. We always have such a wonderful participation when we do these kinds of webinars, which just goes to show how much we need to continue to do them. And our panel tonight is just fantastic. I think that you'll be truly engaged throughout the evening. I thank them all for being here. And I can tell you personally how much this particular topic connects with me. And so I just wanted to welcome you, to say hello. And I look forward to learning more tonight and finding out ways that we can help our children. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Amy and Susan, and to our panel, and have a great night. Oh, and a quick plug, because I have to. We are having our Summer Leadership Conference, July 16th to 17th in Albany. Registration is going live this week. Our theme is There's No Place Like PTA. So click your heels together, come join us over the rainbow at the Desmond Hotel, otherwise known for the weekend as Oz. And enjoy the night. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to direct the first question to Dr. Rotunda to see what are school counselors seeing in schools now, since we're 2 years into the pandemic, and especially as we come close to the end of another not quite normal and very different school year. What are school counselors seeing? What is the conversation that you are having with your colleagues?
Thanks, Amy, and good to see you. It's been an interesting year, as you said. It's a year back. Everyone assumed that, okay, everything's going to get back to normal. It's going to be just the same as it was before. Well, that ain't true. What they're seeing is increased anxiety, a great level of referrals for risk assessments in elementary schools, parents calling elementary schools for help with their kids, a lot of attendance concerns, absentee rates, school avoidance, which probably stems from anxiety. The teachers are requesting in elementary schools whole class supports due to a lack of maturity across the board. And we have to remember some of these kids had never been in school. And so they're learning how to be a student, readiness skills, frustration, difficulty working independently, a lot of kids who need one-on-one assistance, very often related to grieving. Lots of kids had, specific family losses, grandparents, parents, and so on from COVID. 612, again, increased anxiety, school phobia, body image issues, drug and alcohol use, lots more aggression than previous years. They see increased homelessness, abuse at home, lack of food resources, some lack of housing. High school, they're talking same stuff, anxiety, stress, depression, self-harm, suicidal ideation, some with plans and attempts. And again, mental health issues are reported to be at an all-time high. One school reported 5 suicide attempts. Everyone says that social media is playing a huge role. TikTok copying, TikTok challenges. That just makes me smile because I can see silliness in middle schools. 2 students were sent to an urgent care for mental health issues in 1 week from a middle school. A lot of suicidal ideation, self-harm, cutting, eating disorders. They relate that some of those come in batches, it seems, and seem to be sort of contagious. Elementary school students at risk for suicide, poor resiliency skills. Boys with eating disorders, which is reported to be fairly unusual. A lot of school phobic cases. That's what school counselors are seeing.
That's a pretty daunting list.
Yeah.
It definitely is. So Brandon or Dr. Rafai, anything that you would like to sort of add? If we have this huge daunting list of concerns, as parents, as teachers, I'm also a teacher, and I know a lot of the people, or a handful of people on our call, are tonight as well. What can we do as teachers? What can we do as parents to help support our kids that are maybe experiencing some of these issues? So Brandon, do you want to jump in and contribute anything, or Dr. Rafai?
I think Dr. Rafai, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now there you are. Yes.
All right. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you again for your invitation for me this evening. And I think maybe the first thing that I imagine a lot of the guests this evening are parents and caregivers. We have been through a lot this past couple of years, and a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed. And in order to help our children, I think the first approach would be to actually think of it that we need to help ourselves first, as parents, as caregivers, to focus actually on our own self-care. Because once we do that and we are in a good place, that's when we can help our children and actually provide for them the help that they need. So I would think that in terms of coping strategies with these kind of difficult times, and to be able to help our children to navigate through these stressful times, our first approach needs to be that we need to focus on our own self-care. And it's simply basically developing and cultivating certain good habits, and learning how to integrate these habits into our daily lives and daily schedules. So, and it's really the simple things are the things that can really make the biggest difference. For example, our diets, making sure that we take good care of ourselves in terms of eating regular meals, having a healthy, balanced diet of nutritious foods, preferably if we can have at least on a regular basis dinner together as a family, eat with, like have our children get into the habit of having meals together at least once a day or maybe in the weekends, depending on our schedules. Of course, this is not easy, but that's like something that is very important and can make a huge difference in terms of our own health and sense of well-being. The second thing would be like, I would like focus on aspects like exercise. Like we need to, in taking good care of ourselves, like focusing, for example, on trying to incorporate in our day something, it doesn't have to be elaborate, but something as simple as like going outside, go for a walk every day. Have like a 30 minutes in which we do something physical. And can be as simple as just getting outside, go for a walk. If we can involve our children with us into like engaging as a family in some fun activities in the local park, for example, or going for a walk together, or having our own kind of home workouts, for example, like something that we do on a routine basis at home, and maybe we can involve our children in our own personal workouts at home. So something of that nature that can get us to do something physical on a daily basis, that makes a huge difference in our own sense of well-being. And the third thing, which is actually, I believe very important, is our sleep. A lot of people have been having like their schedules have been like disturbed and all over the place during the pandemic, and as adults and children as well. But if we start first with ourselves, making sure we have a regular sleep schedule, develop like a good bedtime routines to kind of unwind before going to bed, create like a calm and relaxing environment, and kind of like unwind and before we go to bed, and then try to go to bed at the same time every evening, and waking up around the same time in the morning, having adequate hours of sleep. This is actually very important. Sleep is such an important component for our overall sense of well-being, and that will reflect on our children, because our children's overall well-being also depends a lot on their sleep. And good sleep for them will get them to feel good during the whole day and do better in school, and overall having a very improved and enhanced ability to perform throughout the entire day. So in doing actually that, we are setting an example for our children. We are actually leading by example and setting for them a good role model for them to kind of actually do like us. Like children actually like tend to look to their parents, and they would imitate their parents. And kind of if they see us as parents having a regular sleep schedule and prioritize our sleep time, that actually will make them more prone to imitating us and following us or doing like us as parents. And it would be easier for us to, if we try to implement these kind of strategies or disciplines for them, it's much easier when they see us do it, that they will actually follow and do it as well. Besides that, like another area of self-care, I believe, can be like certain times during the day that we need to just give it for kind of try to connect with ourselves and just get out of the whole like busyness of our daily lives. For example, like something as simple as 5 or 10 minutes a day in which we do some meditation. Doesn't need to be anything elaborate, just keep it simple. Like we can just for 5 or 10 minutes, just sitting down, closing our eyes and just follow our breathing. Just as simple as that. Like we breathe all the time, and just being aware of our breathing, like breathing in, feeling we are breathing in, then breathing out and feeling we are breathing out. It's as simple as that for 5 minutes. That can make a big difference if we do it regularly, whether at the beginning of our days or at the end of our days or at some point during the day. It sounds very simple, but it's actually not that simple because we tend to forget.
We tend to forget,
And-
and we also get so busy and so wrapped up in things. And I like the point that you made as well about having our children watch and learn, seeing all these lessons. We are teaching our children how to behave and how to cope, whether we realize it kind of or not. And actually that leads into my question for you, Brandon. How can, speaking and involving families, how can parents talk to their kids about mental health? How can we normalize this conversation around mental health in our families?
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Rafai and Dr. Rotunda, thanks. Nice to join you. And Dr. Rotunda, I'm sorry I wasn't able to effectively say hello to you today when you were on our webinar this afternoon, but thank you for joining us there. But, as I was thinking also around kind of just the current state in this, around kind of the normalization of the conversation, I think one thing I would add is I think how important it is to reestablish those social opportunities, and that those, we focus a lot on learning loss, but we also, the biggest challenge I think from a human perspective is just 2.5 years of disruption of our socialization. And I think that is very important. And I think, Dr. Rotunda mentioned kids that haven't even been in school at some point. And I think, I have friends that have grandchildren that were born and they haven't seen people outside of their house. They've only seen strangers in masks, right? So there's lots of things we can do to socialize. But in terms of the normalization, I think the benefit of what the last 2 years, one of the unintended outcomes of the pandemic is that people are more aware. There's lots of there's from a national level, from state levels, from local levels. There's no longer convincing that needs to happen around the importance of mental health. But I think if we look at it from a perspective of how do we talk to our children around their physical health, how do we talk to them around kind of their development as a human being, whether that be kind of around health and nutrition and fitness, and how we talk with them around their sexual health as they get older, and conversations that we have in that way. I think it's important that we look at it as we are teaching children how to have an emotional vocabulary, an emotional awareness. It's expanding beyond good and bad, and it cannot just start when we start seeing challenges, right? It cannot, these conversations don't start at 16 years old. And so I think part of what it also can do is that parents can become, and caregivers and the adults in children's lives, because there's a lot of people besides mom and dad that are going to be part of this, that help students and help our children. I think it's, first of all, the adults, it is incumbent upon us to become more aware of not only just signs and symptoms of mental illness and mental health disorders, but just understanding what developmentally is happening in children's lives. And I think also talking to kids about how they are resilient in their own way. So drawing attention to that when they go through a situation that is stressful, that is anxiety producing, that we say to them, well, that was a really, really difficult thing you went through, and you really managed that. You really got through that test. You got through that really challenging situation. And what did you do, right? And actually drawing upon them their own sense of strength and their own sense of resilience. And I think the other thing that I would say in terms of how we talk about mental health from is recognizing our own biases. I was raised in a household where mental health was not a conversation, even though it should have been. I understand that there's also intergenerational differences in the way we understand mental health and talk about it. There are cultural differences in the way we approach mental health, even in just terms of privacy and who we share that with. So I think part of that is becoming more aware of knowledge and resources and increasing our comfortability, and then also taking the risk to speak to students, because they are having those conversations. They are more versed in talking about their experiences and their thoughts and their feelings than I think we give them credit for sometimes.
Definitely. I've seen that too. I teach at the high school level. And so some of my students are very open about the fact, yep, I get to go see my therapist today, and I'm really struggling and I need to go talk to the social worker or our students assistance counselors. And so those resources are definitely there and available. And I'm happy to see that over the last, this is my 18th year in the classroom, that conversation is becoming more normalized, at least with my, upper teenagers and my high school students. So it's changing. I think we just need to keep that ball rolling and keep it going. So as a follow-up question, Dr. Rotunda, so talking about, being able to support our kids in mental health, what would you have if there's a child in crisis that we know of, from some sort of mental illness, involving families and having those conversations? Do you have any suggestions about how we can talk to the rest of the family, siblings, or other like parents, and how we can help support not only the student who's in crisis, but also the siblings? When there's a mental health issue in a family, it doesn't just affect that one person with the mental health issue. It affects siblings, it affects parents, it affects everybody. So do you have suggestions on how we can sort of create that wraparound support and have conversations with siblings and parents and others who are affected as well?
I think the first thing as a school counselor, when I was a school counselor, was knowing what resources I had. When we had a situation like that in the district I worked in, we could easily see who the other kids in the family were. And so we would know who the other psychologists or counselors or social workers in whichever building those kids were. And then we could give them a heads up that something was going on. But I think every situation is going to be a little different. And if I'm talking to parents, I'm going to say something like, know who the helpers are, know who the people you could go to. If your child's got a school counselor, they're all supposed to have access to one, K-12 in New York State. If your child has a school counselor, find out who that person is, get to know them, just introduce yourself. It doesn't have to be a big deal. If not, find out who the helpers are in your schools. If it's a psychologist, social workers, the school nurses are amazing. Find out who those helpers are. And then you have to look at, I think, each situation individually. I think you have to consult with the parents, and I'm thinking of a situation that happened in the school where I work. You have to consult with the parents and see what they're comfortable with. Ask them, how are they going to talk to the younger kids or older kids? Ask them how much information do they want the teachers to have about the situation. You got to have those conversations to find out what each individual family is comfortable with. Some are very resourceful. Some need all the help you can give them. And so I think each situation is going to be different. Some of the younger siblings in situations may need help as well. And we have to get them connected with the help in whichever building they're in. Depending on where you live, and I see there's 85 people probably from all over the state on this meeting. Depending on where you live, you may have really good resources in your communities, for outside services. Other communities don't have those kind of resources, so you have to know that as well. But I would say, just to summarize it, each situation is individual, and I think you have to speak to the parents first to see what they're comfortable with.
That's a wonderful suggestion. So part of this conversation about that has to start with parents. And it has to start with, how can we support parents, and how can we kind of lead by example? And I know that Dr. Rafai, you had talked about how we can sort of model these positive behaviors and things for our children. Creating that idea and that environment of sound emotional health and sound physical health, moving forward positively as we sort of emerge from the pandemic and get back to whatever normal is going to look like. What are some of the strategies? I know you'd mentioned, eating right and making sure. I think sleep is the one thing that most of us that are very busy and stressed out and have so many things on our plates, I think that we neglect and forget how important that is. What suggestions would you have as far as moving forward in a positive direction, to make sure that as we emerge from this, we can really create that positive environment and positive role model for our children?
Well, I think it's again, once we kind of start leading our children into that direction by setting a good example for them, being role models for them, and kind of engage in activities that we would like them to actually do like us, and to kind of, children usually look up to their parents, and may or may not show it, but everything we do, it registers with our children. Whatever we say, whatever we do, the way we do it, the choices we make, all this, they're like sponges. They actually get it all, and it kind of get registered in them. So I think that's kind of was the gist of what I was saying earlier, is kind of like to, like, once we focus on our own self-care and we set examples for our children, being role models for them, then we can start encouraging them to kind of like follow along the same lines of what we are doing, focusing on those basic areas that you were just mentioning earlier, of how to like take good care of themselves, and being kind of like providing for them the structure that can make them able to develop these good habits, and being also like in a kind of a like create for them the needed structure that can enable them to be able to do and to actually develop and to kind of engage in the activities that we were talking about. Another like area that is very important is also we need to actually like encourage our kids to and talk with them about how it is difficult, definitely, to move forward after a crisis or after like kind of a difficult time or stressful time. But the way to do that starts with having a vision of how our children see themselves down the road. Like they can get like stuck in the difficulties and the stress. A lot of kids have been struggling with a lot of anxiety, a lot of like social difficulties. They have lost some of their social skills that they had before, or they didn't develop in the normal kind of or the like the optimal way over the past year or two. So we can actually engaging them in developing a vision of how do they see themselves in the next 6 months, in the next, like for the next summer. How would it be like if the next summer would be the best summer of their life? What would they like to do? How would it look like their next school year? How would they see themselves in the next school year? For example, like would they see themselves like getting good grades, being successful, having good friends that they can enjoy their company and have a lot of fun with? Do they want to get better at a certain kind of sports, or do they want to learn a certain kind of sports, or learn an instrument, or develop a hobby, or like what would it look like for them if they were to like just freely imagine the best kind of next year? How would that look like for them? And once they start to have more of a like the ability to kind of just talk about it and imagine it, encourage them to see it in details. How would that really be? How would you really be like? What would you be doing with your friends? Where would you be going? And would you be like studying or developing yourself in a certain sport? How, like once they kind of start to get into that and having this kind of a vision of themselves down the road, then you can start help them to kind of translate this vision into goals. And these goals, if we can develop in our kids the ability to put their visions and all what they imagine into like tangible goals that they can write down.
I love how that is, you know, it's a goal with steps where you can actually help your children be able to accomplish this goal, and seeing how what their social life could look like and what those social interactions could look like. That is a very important thing too. However, there's a downside, and Brandon, I'm going to ask you a question, and it really has to do with that social aspect of things, and especially with social media. Social media can be a very powerful tool to be able to connect lots of people. It also can create a lot of mental health issues, or it is suspected that it could contribute to. So some studies that actually find that students who use, and a lot of youth who use social media regularly, are more likely to feel sad or depressed. There's the comparison culture where you look at the Instagram perfect of everybody else, and then you say, but I'm not that, and so I'm not good enough. And so that there's some research to show that that's contributing to some of our children's, mental health issues. But then there are other studies that are like, nope, everything's fine and there's little to no effect. So is there something that parents should consider, especially with, what Dr. Rotunda was saying about the TikTok challenges and the TikTok copying and, all of that? What should we be concerned with as parents? What should we watch for as far as our children's social media use? And at what point do we sort of intervene or become concerned that social media use is actually affecting our children's mental health?
So for the next 3 hours, we'll discuss the topic. This is actually a topic that is, so I think from an adult perspective, I think many of us here, I would be, I think the majority of us here have some social media presence, and I will speak really briefly. I have been the person where I have been scrolling through Instagram and I've seen people on vacations and the perfect dinners and all that stuff. And I actually kind of feel really crappy about myself. Here I'm sitting in my bedroom or wherever I am on a Saturday morning, laundry's all over the place, but I recognize that in myself, right? And I go, okay, you know what? Wait a minute. This is a curated version of someone's life. They're showing me this. However, children don't have that emotional elasticity that we have. They don't have that history to understand necessarily. They may intellectually understand it. Oh yeah, this is not real. But I will stop there. And I actually wrote my note. It is real. And I think that's the first thing that adults of a generation, I'm the generation, my job was to change the channel on the TV, UHF, VH, that was my job. So I'm pre-social media. It is real. It is real to these kids. It is not fake. Right? It is the way they engage. There are such wonderful benefits of social media. There's something I saw, you can just do a quick search online. The thing I saw was 75% of teens in the United States have some sort of social media account. 1 in 4 tend to be heavy users of that. But I think what is important for adults to understand is that social media is neither the enemy or the solution, right? It is in fact media. And like with all media, it's about consumption. And like with all media, when the product is free, we are essentially the product. I'm going on a little tangent there, but we have to sort of understand that as parents, this again, as I talked about the conversation around mental health, it doesn't start at 17 when your son won't put down his phone at the dinner table. It doesn't start there. There's lots of conversations around, I think the average age of a social media account, the first time somebody gets is 12 and a half. There is plenty of opinion out there around when kids should get phones and when kids should go online. And I am not here to tell you that, but I'm here to tell you that the best information that I've heard is delay it as much as possible, right? Delay those actions and those accesses as much as possible. And then when they need it, when they get it, it's about responsible usage. It's about understanding as a parent, as an adult, we may say, Dr. Rotunda, you're like, TikTok. I mean, I think I have TikTok and I look through it and it's kind of funny and stuff, but I don't follow personally. And here's my advice. I'm not following, right? Do I follow the things that the kids are following? Am I seeing what they're seeing, right? Am I as if I'm a teacher or a school administrator, as a parent, am I seeing what is in the feed of my children, of the students in the school? Am I able to see that as well? You might not be able to see it all, right? Part of it is, who allows you to see it. I think partly is also not minimizing the importance and significance of it. Again, developmentally, those things are much more impactful to a younger person than they are to an adult. And the last thing I would say, and then I could go on for this forever, but I just want to put this out there. I think it's also really, really important to have some real honest conversations with our older teens about what they are doing around sexuality, sharing online, sharing via text, because they can snap pictures, send it to their friends. Guess what? They could have just violated child pornography laws, even if it's their own picture. And I think part of it is having them understand what it is. And again, starting that conversation early. I will pause here because I just will pause here, but that is my initial thoughts on that.
That's a hugely important conversation. I have had that conversation with my almost 12-year-old. So there is a time to, before any of that starts, it's have that early and often, right? Just like voting. No, I'm kidding. But really those are the conversations I think that we really need to be having with our children, and that coupled with normalizing the conversation around mental health and having these wraparound supports. If we do get into a situation where we think that our own child, or we who are as teachers think that there's a child who needs intervention, where would you suggest, and I'll ask the same question of Dr. Rotunda and then Dr. Rafai as well, where should we go as sort of a first stop toward getting that child some help and assistance?
Right. So I'm just going to say, I think that adults tend to fall in two categories, broad categories. One, those that sort of see a problem and they rush to it. Let me fix this. And those of us are like, yeah, I'm not going to look at that. Right. So I'm just going to ignore that until it becomes a thing. I went to the doctor for the first time in over 2.5 years yesterday because of a variety of pandemic reasons. Couldn't get an appointment. On my way there, I was coming up with all sorts of things. The doctor's going to say this to me, this, and I was having the argument in the car, like, how dare you talk to me about I think, so I can understand that from a personal perspective, the protectiveness of my own health. When we transfer it onto our children, it becomes even more challenging because we don't want someone to tell us that our child is sick, is got a problem, is diagnosable. I think part of the thing is that as adults, who do we trust? Who do we have a compatibility with? Is that somebody from PTA? Is that somebody from a parent group? Is that a teacher that you that you had a good connection with maybe this year or 2 years ago? I think part of it is also being willing to sort of confront that stigma that, a diagnosis is simply something to allow a clinician or a practice to get paid. It's necessary. And so we kind of get really caught up in this. I don't want to have my child diagnosed with X, Y, and Z. Well, no one really does. But we think about what are the behaviors. I think part of it is understanding behaviors, seeing them, being able to sort of say, I would rather be that person who rushes in to sort of fix something early on, because we know, and having worked in community mental health, and I'm sure others here could attest to this, the problems that we see in terms of serious mental illness, a lot of, and the impact on adult life, right? And the impact on adolescents, college age students, and so on and so forth, are because we either ignored or didn't want to address certain signs and symptoms. And so I think the first step is really kind of, who do I trust in the school? Who do I trust in my community? Because this is a personal conversation. It's more personal than telling your doctor about how much you exercise or whatever the thing is. This is the kids. That's where I would start with.
Wonderful. Yep, Dr. Rotunda.
No, I would add that there's there's a sense I can answer that question both as a parent and as a counselor. I mean, I had kids in school a long time ago. Now I got grandkids in school, and I can see the reluctance of parents, because I was one, who would come to school and say, I think something's going on with my kid, because it might reflect on me as a parent. Mm-hmm. And that's it sounds weird, but that's a barrier. As a school counselor, I would say, from parents, lots of times it was like, why didn't you say something? I could have got you some help. We've got 9 resources for that particular thing that's going on. And so I think that it's incumbent upon the schools to listen and to create a welcoming scenario, or whatever the word is, atmosphere, for the parents to come in and to ask questions. And we used to joke about we should call it Meet Your Teacher Night, school open house night. And we would sit in the counseling office. It would start at 7 o'clock, and we would sit there until 8:45, because no one would come and see us until 10 minutes till 9. And we got a lot of work done and chatted and saw each other we hadn't seen in a long time. But then we had a line outside the door, because the teachers would say, why don't you see your kid's counselor? And so there'd be a line outside the door. And, I would do it as a parent, and we had some parents who were pretty smart about this, they would come in at 7 o'clock and say, hey, I want to talk to you before I go sit with these teachers. So get to know your kid's counselor. I said it, half an hour ago, I think I said the same thing. Get to know who the helpers are, get to know who can be helpful to you. And I would say to counselors, and I always say this to counselors, make sure that you have a welcoming atmosphere. Make sure that it's the kind of place where people would be comfortable to talk to you. It's complicated. There are cultural complications in terms of, who's gonna access those services that are available to them. I saw an article the other day about pediatricians. Pediatricians are the first line that a lot of parents go to. Many parents go to for, something's going on with my kid, and they'll make a great referral, for psychiatric care, and they can't get an appointment for 6 months. Not helpful, but appropriate. So it's complicated. But I would say get to know the people in your school. And I'm speaking to the PTA, so that's kind of the wrong group to talk to. I mean, you all are already there, and you're tremendous advocates for kids and mental health and so on. So I'll stop right there.
Dr. Rafai, what would you suggest if we know that there is a student in crisis? Who would you suggest that we reach out to if you have an addition to what's been mentioned?
Well, actually, definitely, I think as parents, we need to definitely always have to look at our children and see where they are at in terms of their ability to do what they need to do and what they want to do and to progress in life. And if we feel that they are being limited by certain kind of difficulties or having symptoms that kind of shows that they need more help, we definitely need to seek that help. And the sooner we do that, the better. But there is something I would like to kind of stress on is our role also as parents is to kind of help our children to realize their own strengths in facing difficulties and stress, and in being able to overcome these difficulties, and encourage them to kind of tap into their own resources. Like what we were talking about earlier about kind of encouraging them to have their vision of what would be their best self, and then starting to translate that into goals, and kind of that applies to young children as much as to older teens. Definitely with different kind of degree of engagement, but the idea is to encourage your child to just talk about what they have in their mind and listen to them, listen to what they aspire to, listen to how they see themselves, and listen to what they see as difficult, and then work with them to help them to kind of figure out what would be the best way to achieve their goals. What would be their goals? How can they define it? And then translate that into an action plan, into how they can actually start working to achieve these goals. And the more you kind of encourage them in that direction, the more you help them to develop their own sense of strength and sense of motivation to achieve their own goals. And that's also can be the opportunities in which you start to see that if our children are having symptoms or difficulties that can make it hard for them to really engage into doing what they need to do, or doing the actions that they need to do, or having their own action plan, their own goals, and their own kind of level of motivation and encouragement, if you feel like they are really struggling hard and they cannot get to that, that would be the moment when we need to seek help from professionals to actually help them overcome these difficulties. And the sooner we do that, the better. Because if we let it kind of let our children struggle that way without getting them the help they need from, it could be just pediatricians are definitely the first level, and then referrals can be made for therapists, and therapists can refer to other therapists who are more specialized. Sometimes medications can be needed, and a referral for a child and adolescent psychiatrist can be needed. But that's after we kind of do all what we can as parents in order to get our children to do their best and get the best out of themselves in order to overcome the obstacles that they are having, and help them to kind of get into these habits of setting goals, develop action plans, having kind of a short list of tasks that they need to do, and that can help to reduce their stress and also make them feel that they know what they want, they have sense of values, sense of priorities, and they are actually the ones who are in control and of it, and they are the ones who are choosing what is it that they are trying to achieve and what is it that they are trying to do, and also the ways of achieving it and doing it. All this, of course, with our support and guidance as parents.
And I think that that sense of empowerment that we can give to our kids is so, so important. We are really quick, really running out of time, but really, really fast. I want just a super quick from Brandon and also from Dr. Rotunda. If there was one thing, I'm still here, even though my video apparently disappeared. I hope you can still hear me. But what's one thing that parents can do starting tomorrow to help their kids? So Brandon, you go first.
I just would say that tell them that they are, that they are loved, that they are important, that they are cared for, that the adults in their lives are there for them when they need them, and they may not need them in that moment, but that kind of leaving the door on the handle, so to speak. I think, and that what they're going through, what they're experiencing, they may not even know what they're experiencing, and that's okay. That no one really kind of, this is new for everybody. And I think that validation of the sort of unknown, but also the validation that they are cared for and that they are important.
And I think we sort of assume that our kids know that, but I think that hearing it is equally important. And I think being intentional about that could really go a long way. All right, Dr. Rotunda, what's one thing that parents can do starting tomorrow to help their kids?
I'm sorry, I can only do two things. We got to meet with some high school students the other night, Susan and I, and one of the things that they said is they wanted to be heard, they wanted to be listened to, they wanted someone to be available for them to just speak to and just make sure that they were heard. And my second thing is, parents, you're the best advocates that we have for increased mental health services in schools. Make sure your school board has given you the resources that you need for school counselors, psychologists, social workers, and school nurses, so that the help is there for your kids.
That's wonderful. What is one thing that we'll kind of go backwards? So Dr. Rotunda, you're still on the hook, but what's one thing that PTA can do to help at our state or local level? We definitely have and will continue to advocate for increased mental health services and personnel in schools. But is there something that we as PTA can take action to do at either the state or local level to make sure that we can support our kids better?
Yeah, I think just continuing your advocacy for the mental health services as you have for several years, just continue that. I think it's really made a big impact already.
Okay. Brandon, do you have a suggestion about what we could do as PTA to help at our state or local level?
I think the T is important, as in the teacher, and I think I would say it's not just teachers, it's the school staff, it's those that are working with and around our students. And one of the things that I have heard in my almost 1 year now with Mahaney's is that and we heard this just as we started this conversation, is that the adults in our schools are really struggling. And they are feeling that while rightfully so, a lot of the focus is really on students and student wellness and mental health, the teachers, the support staff, the administrators are kind of saying, but what about me? What about my mental health? So, that's, and we heard that we have to take care of ourselves to take care of our children. And that's where I would think a focus could also be.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Rifai, do you have a suggestion for what PTA can and should be doing at our state or local level?
Well, I think you're already doing a great job, and just continue doing what you're doing and continue advocating for prioritizing mental health. And I totally agree about the importance of advocating for mental health for teachers who actually are fundamental in the care for our children in school, and the importance of their own mental health is definitely something that I think needs to be focused on as well.
As a teacher, I appreciate and echo all of those things because it has, yeah, it has been a rough one, I think, for us as well, for us adults. So we're at 8:21. We are scheduled to end about 8:30. We have several questions that have been entered in the chat that I want to make sure that we can at least hit some of those. And I think that if we, reach the end of time and folks want to stay on or are available to, we'll see if we can maybe run over a little bit. Hopefully we won't run over too much, but we're going to see if we can switch to a little bit of to address some of the questions that are in the chat. And I'm going to ask Susan, my buddy, who's been super instrumental in helping and moderating the chat, to see what questions that we want to be able to address. So Susan, I'm putting you on the spot.
All right, so I'll start with asking, we all know that there's a really getting private therapy and finding a therapist is a 6 to 9 month waiting list. There's a lot of issues that we're having, but a couple of questions came in about how to get a child on board with seeing a therapist or seeing the school psychologist, or how do you get them on board for seeing someone, getting the help that they need, and for their social, emotional, and developing those skills.
I'm gonna just jump in here really quickly. One of the comments I was looking at the chats as they were coming in a little bit. I think we have to understand that it's not just about the mental health professionals. There are lots of resources in our schools around youth peer advocates, family peer advocates. I think someone mentioned that. Those can be the gateway in some ways of helping get the support and that social connection that might be needed. And I think the other thing I have said this, and I've said this a million times, and I hope I don't violate any insurance rules. I don't, is that, telehealth is better than nothing, right? And so the beauty of it is that if every therapist is doing telehealth, yes, I know there's long waiting lists, but if you're a New York resident, you just got to be in New York State. So you can see a telehealth therapist in Plattsburgh if you live on Long Island. It may not be the best solution long-term, but it is a solution. So I tell people, change your zip code in your search, try something different.
That's a good way to get creative. Anyone else want to answer that question before we move on?
Yeah, I saw some other ideas go by in the chat. One of the ideas is mentorship programs. A lot of schools have mentorship programs. It gives a kid a hook. We always like to say every child should have one adult that they're comfortable with going to. It could be a teacher, it could be a counselor, it could be the principal. But those programs need to be in place, and that comfortableness needs to be in place for it to happen. A lot of schools also have peer mediation programs that kids could get involved in. So there's couple other ideas.
Dr. Rafai, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think it's the more we can kind of get our children to kind of have an idea of what exactly can help means really, and kind of normalize the idea of just opening up, having a chat, talking to someone who is willing to listen can sometimes be helpful. And because the question, as I understood it, had to do with how can we get the children to really kind of wanting to or getting engaged in therapy, in the therapy process. Like maybe the parents think that their kids need help, but the kids doesn't think like they need any help. So I think with the parents, it's kind of more about listening to the kids and kind of getting them to just talk about how exactly do they experience themselves, and if they are having difficulties in any area, to kind of get them to associate that difficulty with possibility of finding a solution by themselves, by just not necessarily talking with them, but just opening up and talking with someone who is objective, who is not their parents, and who will be just there willing to listen and have a chat with them, and then take it from there.
Thank you. So we're here, we're PTA, we're obviously all very engaged and passionate parents, and you are here, but we PTA for every child. And so in that case, how can we help children who don't have supportive parents? A lot of the suggestions were for us to model these behaviors and the self-care, and so that they would learn it from us. But what do you do for a child who's having and showing signs of mental health issues who don't have that parental support at home?
Well, I think that would be like the importance of being able to provide like a parent-like figure, in the sense of being able to listen to the child and also like offering help for the child. Like, I think a child would just kind of, what they need is really feel they are being listened to and someone really cares about what they are going through. So just the ability to be there and listen to them, and then try to get them to associate their difficulties with a kind of help that can be out there and they can get, and help connect them with that help. I think children usually are, on one hand, they are resilient, but also like when they feel like someone is really listening, and that translates to them that someone is really caring about me. Like it's more about this ability to give them that feeling that you are giving them the time and you are just listening. And then you will be able, in a way or in another, depending on their circumstances, their social background, their kind of like the resources available, to be able to connect them with the most available or appropriate help. Could be pretty much exactly, I totally agree with the approach about using all the resources available with telepsychiatry, that it can be a kind of an easier access to get like help quickly, or at least like kind of in a kind of a quicker way than just waiting for being seen in person. And a lot of teenagers and younger children as well can be open for it if it's introduced to them that way.
Brandon or Dr. Otanda, do you want to respond to that question before we move on?
I just think community, knowing your community, the community support, the community organizations, the kind of the spaces that support the kids outside of school, whether they be, that's where the community really comes into play.
Yeah, and as you say, every community is unique. Where I worked, there was a really, really strong youth association. It was sponsored by Huntington Youth, and the kids, that was their hook. They went over there. There was good things to do. So you have to know what your local resources are.
Thank you. And we'll do one more question before we wrap it up. School is supposed to be a safe place for our kids, and we know that in the last 2 years we kind of took that, it kind of was taken away. So as Dr. Otanda mentioned, we're seeing a lot of school refusal and a lot of increased anxiety. So what do you do, or what assistance can we give to students who have really increased anxiety about going to school, or are just refusing to go to school, period?
Yeah, the one word answer is desensitization. In the days before pandemic, when we had rare cases of school refusal, we worked very closely with the parents and their outside doctors and therapists, the school psychologists, school social workers, to work on a plan, and everyone was unique for each student to re-enter the school, and it was constantly being retailored for the students. Constantly rescheduling and so on. So the desensitization really works well for school refusal. When you have a lot of kids with that situation, sometimes it gets difficult in terms of managing it. But that's the short answer.
I remember I had bronchial asthma as a child. I was sick a long time, but not for long periods of time, 2-3 weeks sometimes. And I remember at one point, so this memory just came to me. So I like, wow, where was that in my brain? I remember a teacher came to my house, brought some schoolwork, sat down with me at a table. Now I was one student, right? So again, that is just one instance where you might have to think creatively. Schools might have to think creatively, think about the highest needs, where it might take that sort of level of intervention. And then also think creatively around the social connections, like how can, in some ways, do we need to sort of bring certain things to those students where they are, right? Whether that be, sports arts, music, stuff like that, there might be some creative ways to think about, hey, hey, we're here, we want you back. But yeah, I think that might, you got to think creatively about that.
Yeah, we did home teaching quite often, if there was a diagnosis from a physician or a psychiatrist. So that was another intervention. Yep.
Well, I think we have officially reached the time that we were scheduled to. I think we can, I don't know if people want to stay on for a couple more minutes. If there are questions that you would like us to address, I wanted to be respectful of the time that our panelists have graciously given us this evening. And so thank you so much for being here, Dr. Rotunda, Brandon, Dr. Rafai, and really, Dr. Rafai as well is one of our Fidelis Care partners, and we wanted to thank them so much for their partnership and for being our partner in our joint health and wellness program for Every Child Healthy. Dr. Rotunda, you have been a frequent guest and you are such a good supporter of PTA, and we enjoy you so much. Brandon, this is the first time that I've worked with you. I so valued the conversation and what you were able to bring to the table, and rest assured this won't be the last time that we invite you to be here either. So we will hopefully partner with all three of you. I think that this was such a valuable conversation for me, at least as a parent. I can't speak for everybody else, but for me as a parent, for me as a teacher, seeing some of these mental health concerns in our students, in our children, this has really been a fantastic and valuable conversation. So I'm going to stay on for a couple of minutes. I think Susan can as well. So for those who want to be able to ask some questions, we'll hang out for a little bit. Panelists, if you need to drop off, you are absolutely welcome to. We so thank you for being here and for your partnership and your support of New York State PTA. If you are able to kind of hang out and still have part of the conversation, we welcome you to stay as well. But we wanted to be respectful of the time that we have allotted for this. So we are past 3 minutes over time, sorry. But thank you so much for being here. If you need to leave, we completely understand, but we'll see if we can continue to take a couple questions if folks want to stay on for a bit. So Susan, you're on the
We
hook.
have a few more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few more questions. So I'll keep going then for anyone who wants to stay on. A question about what do you do with a disagreeable teen who doesn't want to engage in going for the walk with the family, or, when you're trying to check in with them, what do you do with them when they've withdrawn and they're not agreeable and they're just not engaging with you?
I notice no one is jumping right in to answer that question.
I'm smiling because I'm watching my son go through that with his children, as I did when he and his brother were teenagers. And it makes me smile because I don't know whatever the word is, Schadenfreude. I don't know if there's a simple solution. I think that, the parenting role is going to be something like, find out what they're interested in and get involved in what they're interested in. It might not be a walk with the dog on a Tuesday night. It might be something else entirely, but I think you have to tailor it to each child. And the idea of, and I see families go on vacations and things. It's a tough question, especially with teenagers, especially those who've been disconnected for a couple of years.
The only thing I would say, and this has not, maybe it's just a slight deviation on this, is I know a lot of times I'll hear parents and friends of mine talk about the phone. Parents, the phone is actually, if you're paying for it, the phone's yours. And I know that's an easy, I think part of it is also, again, going back to kind of part of it is we've all been teenagers at one point in our lives. We've all experienced what it's like to be a teenager. And part of it is kind of, is this a sort of a normal? Is this kind of, to be expected, or is there something else going on here? And I think some of it is, also looking at, am I trying to sort of correct some sort of like parenting child dynamics later on that maybe, and I think part of it is looking at, is this kind of typical? That's where speaking to other parents, I think, is super, super helpful, and speaking to the counselors and speaking to people and saying, hey, oh gosh, this is my son's doing this, your daughter's doing that. Okay. Do I need to worry? Not so much, right? I think that can be very helpful.
Yeah, I think also like it's important to see the like the degree of like the kind of non-engagement or lack of interest from the teenager as a kind of, it's a spectrum actually. Like it can go from this kind of like a teenage thing in which they want to be among their own friends and they just, you know, their parents are not cool enough to hang out with them or to do things with them. And like sometimes it can be helpful for the parents just to, instead of trying to get their teen to kind of join them in the family activity, sometimes it can be actually good to try to join them in what they're doing and see if they can have a place for you, for example, to play a video game with them or to spend some time doing what they like to do and kind of join them that way. And then kind of like gradually see if they would want to also like, because, you know, like you can join them sometimes. They can join you sometimes with the family doing something together. So that's on one end of the spectrum, but also can go all the way to the other end in which a teenager who is like, doesn't want to be with the family, just want to be isolated in his or her room and doesn't want to do anything. And that's probably not their usual. They used to be different than that. And maybe something more is going on. Maybe they are really like kind of going through something that is just not your moody teenage kind of thing. It's more than that they have kind of lack of motivation. They don't want to engage in anything. They don't want to talk even to their friends. They just want to be left alone. They are more irritable. They are kind of like difficult to be around. And this can all be symptoms of depression. And sometimes it needs professional help. So I think it kind of varies like throughout all like the variables in the middle can be like kind of different scenarios that applies for different teens. And it's not easy sometimes to kind of like figure it out, but it's kind of like we need to be on the lookout sometimes for the symptoms in which will trigger for us like red flags that we need to seek professional help.
And this is Kyle Belagapitsky, our executive director. And I'm going to actually kind of ask and answer our last question for the evening. I saw a lot of questions asked about stigma and how we as PTA can really help destigmatize mental health. And I think it's really important to answer this question. And the easiest answer is doing exactly what we're doing as PTA. We have to talk about this at our unit level. We have to talk about this as people. You know, by a show of hands, if we had video, how many of us talk about our physical health? We post on Facebook, oh, my child has a broken arm, or I have a cold, or I have COVID, or I have this, or I have that. But how many of us post about our mental health? So, you know, it's always important to share. So my son has a mental health disorder. He has both an anxiety and tic disorder that his kindergarten teacher actually first noticed when he was in kindergarten. And he is now in 7th grade. And I know I've talked with Bob about it a number of times, and many of you have heard Jackson's story. Well, I myself have both an anxiety disorder and PTSD and a panic disorder from trauma I had at Ground Zero. I was a fireman at Ground Zero. So I think it's really important that we as leaders in our communities and school buildings talk about our own mental health. And that's how we start to have this conversation about stigma. Right. It's also important that we acknowledge, and as Brandon brought up and Bob and the great doctor brought up, that it's okay for our children to have, you know, mental health support. You know, when Jackson was first diagnosed in kindergarten, then, you know, first noticed by his kindergarten teacher, we met with the school counselor, we then met with mental health professionals and with our pediatrician. I thought I failed as a parent, right? But I didn't fail as a parent. I was doing what I needed to do to get him the support that he needed to really succeed in life. And now he still has an anxiety and tic disorder, and you know, he may never outgrow that tic disorder. You'll hear clapping. I'm at the baseball field. I'm multitasking. So we just got to run, yay. But it's really important for us as PTA leaders to talk about that, and for parents to talk about that. And as you as PTA unit leaders and teachers to have this conversation in your units, to bring in experts to talk about mental health. Again, we can't just talk about health and wellness and physical wealth. We have to talk about social emotional learning and the things that we're talking about tonight. I just want to thank everybody for being on behalf of Dana Platon. I really want to thank Amy Heisek, our wellness coordinator, coordinator, and Susan Fisher, our legislation coordinator. And again, on behalf of Dana Clayton, on behalf of Helen Hoffman, our first vice president and our designated officer of advocacy, and especially Brandon and Robert and Dr. Buffet, I really appreciate everything and the time that you've given our members to have this really critical, important conversation. We have been texting along saying, I feel like this is part one of a series that we need to do. Maybe part two is coming in June, where we can focus again on, this conversation. We feel like this is really a great panel. So you're going to be probably getting a call or email from us tomorrow looking for some more dates in the future. Thank you all for joining us. It is 8:45. We kept you a little bit late, so our apologies. But as PTA, you have your homework. I really want you to have this conversation with your unit. I really want you to have this conversation with your school building to figure out how you as PTA can support your principal, can support your fantastic classroom teachers, can support your school counselors, can support your school psychologists to do this work together, because there is no more other important work than we are faced right now in our school buildings. Together, we can support every child with one voice. We can shine a light on every child. And it's my pleasure to wish you a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.